So we're going to talk about the 3Ps specifically, but let's just think about this as, we've onboarded our clients and now we're transitioning into that very first program design or that very first long short-term plan. So I know we're kind of approaching this in a very educational format, but the system is built, based off of the method. So I thought it'd be just easiest to go through, all of the processes that we teach in OPEX without having to reteach you guys, because you guys already know that stuff. So yeah, we're going to use the 3Ps framework to walk through CoachRx today. The thing we're going to hit on is priorities. So this will be a quick one. Just realize that what we walk through with assessment and priorities being automated, there are a decent amount of priorities that have the ability to end up in your client's priority list through automation. You can either block those priorities or you can go in and kind of delete. We are going to add a feature in the next week where you can actually prioritize your priorities. So, here it'd be like 1 through 7. This is the most important. This is what I'm focusing in on the first short-term plan. So that will be in very, very quickly here. But go back, review those automated priorities in the priority section in your client's profile. And also add priorities that you picked up in the initial consultation, add priorities that you picked up in the assessment, and OPEX didn't tell you this thing, but you're like, okay, I want to do this other thing, or I need to prioritize this movement pattern, or I need to prioritize increasing aerobic capacity or muscle endurance relative to the OPEX work test. So this is just a great place to go in and review and edit your automated priorities and also build custom priorities for your clients.
Quick question on that, Carl. What would best practices be around number of priorities each client should have and how regularly you should be updating them?
Yeah, so priorities, it's something that we look at when we create longer or shorter term plans, right? So we don't want to look at priorities every time we go into design for our clients and their calendar. But when we are rebuilding those short-term plans, or when we're initially building that longer-term plan, that's when I would look at the priorities and look at, are these all relevant, right? Like, are these actually priorities today? Because if they're not, archive them, like delete them, get them out of there. But if they are priorities, I do think it is important to have those all visible, even if there's 25 of them, right? But that's why the feature of being able to prioritize your priorities is really important. In my opinion, because if I have a priority list of 25, I know just by looking at it, I'm probably not going to touch 25 ever, right? I'm going to actually delete priorities, and those priorities are going to work their way up top. So I wouldn't say best practice in amount of or number of priorities, Georgia, but I would say best practice in when we get to the short-term plan, it's like, how many priorities are you bringing into that specific 4, 8, 12-week block? I would keep that very, very concise. And that's going to be based off of, what does the training schedule look like? Does this priority interfere with this priority? Like, for instance, I need to get stronger in lower body strength. And it's like, priority number 2, I need to increase motor control in lower body. It's like, I'm probably going to prioritize motor control in this very particular short-term plan. So yeah, I would just say prioritize them, Georgia.
And Suzanne, it's that little exclamation mark inside the box that is the priorities icon.
Next piece is planning. So this one's pretty straightforward, right? So when we look at planning and what's involved in planning before we get to periodization, it's a number of things, right? It's taking into consideration, what are your clients' goals? Why are they with you? Why are they here? What are the resources that they have available? So on and so forth, right? So 2 things that I would look at specifically here are the equipment that they have available if they're not training all in your facility. And then number 2, what is their training schedule? And then when we get to actually designing the short-term plan, we can look at these very specifically, right? So if you guys have that avatar that I talked about yesterday, that's with you 4 days a week, but 2 of those days they're in your facility, and then the other 2 they're in their home gym. You have to understand what days they're going to be in their home gym, and you have to understand what equipment they have available, because going back to the priorities conversation, the priorities are going to be based on, or what you're going to be doing on a Tuesday is going to be based on what equipment they have available to them. You're not going to say, I want to increase lower body or squat absolute strength, and they don't have a barbell, they have 25-pound dumbbells and an assault bike, right? Like, you're probably going to set yourself up for failure there. So in that planning phase, just understanding what equipment your clients have available and what is their training schedule. Those are two things that you have to consider when starting to think about building the long and short-term plans. And then finally, we're going to talk about periodization over the next few slides here. So just how we break it down in CCP, you have to start long, you have to go short, and then you get to the specifics and the nitty gritty and the daily, right? So this view here is essentially us saying, hey, I'm starting this cycle on January 4th, and I'm going to run it all the way to December 31st, right? So you know that now you're in this long-term plan, and it's just a blank calendar. As you add short-term plans, it's just going to bucket them, right? It's like accumulation 1. If I had another accumulation phase after this, it would say accumulation 2, but I have intensification. So it's essentially just a long-term view of what your client's program looks like over the next 12, 24 months, however long you pick for that long-term plan. It's really important to understand that, you know, what are your clients' goals, and who are they? Who is that avatar? Because I do want coaches to build long-term plans for all of their clients, whether they're general population or athletes. But you guys can just start to think about what a long-term plan relatively would look like for an athlete versus a gen pop person. You know, athletes we're getting ready to compete in something, right? So that long-term plan ends at that competition date, or ends a couple weeks after that competition date, and then we're reverse engineering everything before that. And then we might actually go in and put, okay, I'm going to do 8 weeks of accumulation, then I'm going to do 4 weeks of intensification, and then I'm going to do that repetitively for 4 times, and then I'm going to do this pre-competition phase, and then I'm going to competition. So you can see with an athlete, you might have this thing filled out for the next 24 months. But for a general population person, you're probably just going short-term plan by short-term plan, and you're probably just saying, you know, I'm going to bucket this in a year time frame. These are the priorities, or these are the goals that I want to accomplish with my client over the next 12 months. And you're just going accumulation 1, accumulation 2, accumulation 3, deload for 1 week because they're going on vacation. So you can kind of see the differences between building a long-term plan for a general population client versus that athletic performance client, and just looking at those avatars and realizing how those could be different. And another reason why I love building these for general population clients is because it's awesome to share their journey with them, right? It's like, hey, this is what we're working on. This is like a quick snapshot of what the next 6, 12, 24 months looks like relative to what your goals are. And, you know, there will be some pivoting, there will be some shifting, but this is what it looks like all in. And then when we look at this, now we have a really good idea of like, okay, what is the cycle type? How many accumulation phases are we doing over the next 12 months? What is the sustain type? So I want to build out this, you know, very precise map progression. How does that actually look visually? I want to build out this very precise pain progression if that's relevant to your clients. How does this look specifically? So the goal here in this long-term plan is just to have a snapshot of what this thing looks like over the long term. So you're not going to spend much time actually in this. You're going to build it to start. And by build it, I just say you're going to create priorities for that long-term plan. You're going to identify a start and end date, and then all of your short-term plans are going to be built inside of that long-term plan. So now moving to short-term plans. So now this is getting into the specifics inside of an accumulation, intensification, deload, pre-comp, comp phase specifically. So what you're looking at here is an example of what an accumulation phase would look like. And this accumulation phase is spanning over 8 weeks. So what we're seeing is the cycle type and accumulation, any notes that we have inside of this cycle, any priorities that we have inside of this cycle, what the exact sustain progression is, what the exact pain progression is, and then you'll have the opportunity to get an idea of what the daily view looks like. So the Monday through Sunday. But before we get there, just realize once you get to this point, because the way that we bucketed the system or developed the system is that you're doing map 7 for 8 weeks, but say you have, a cycle and you're like, hey, I want to actually get progressively from map 7 to map 6 inside of an 8-week time frame. You can then go inside of this and manually change those map 7s and all of that. But we didn't want to put that on the front end because it's too high drag for the coach. We don't want you to have to go in and like identify, this is what I'm going to do every single week to just create a short-term plan. But you can go in and edit the exact map types after you connect this thing. So just realize that you can edit inside of this view, but this is just a framework to get started.
Sorry, Carl, my computer froze for a minute there and I was trying to find I couldn't see you and I couldn't click anywhere. So apologies for that.
No, you're all good. It's beneficial to have like awkward pauses. You just kind of look around the room and you look at who's getting really uncomfortable.
I was getting really uncomfortable. I was worried Zoom had kicked me out of the call for a second.
I just saw your mouse doing this. I'm like, Georgia, just press.
I was trying to.
No worries, no worries. All right, this last view this is simply the daily plan. So, we've created the long term, we've created that short term. So we created that accumulation phase. While we're inside of that accumulation phase, we're going to update the daily plan. So this is specifically laid out to not be a separate view because it would just be a pain in the ass to be developing your Monday through Sunday. And then you have to click away to see like, okay, what were my priorities again? What map progression am I doing? So we intentionally wanted this to be just a single view. So in this piece, all you're doing is you're considering the training days. So what days of the week are your clients training? You'll see that this view has a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Again, this is relative to what our clients told us their training schedule was. And if you change that, you would actually go into your client's profile and just unclick, the Wednesday, the Saturday, and the Sunday to get this view. And if you wanted to add an additional day, you would just click that sidebar and add that day there, and then it would populate here. So the goal here is we don't want you guys to have to like type in rest days and stuff like that. We want the system to automatically do that and to automatically populate that inside of your calendar view, which we'll take a look at in a second. But on those rest days, you can still prescribe, map 10. You can still prescribe outdoor activity. But what we're going to propose tomorrow is that those are lifestyle things to us. That's not exercise. So what we'll propose tomorrow is that you should actually be doing that in your lifestyle calendar, not inside of your exercise calendar, because there's no progression there. You're not going to change that on a weekly basis. So why not just design that for 8 weeks and it just automatically shows up in your client's app for the next 8 weeks. So yeah, essentially all we're doing here is we're identifying, what the training split is going to be very specifically day by day. And then we're putting those tags in there, which connects then to the training calendar.
Carl, Suzanne had asked whether the client can see this screen or not. You want to answer that one?
Yeah, let's hold on that for a second. When we'll talk about that when we get to the client experience of this piece. But yeah, great question, Suzanne. All right, so the design itself. So we're going from the planning phase to actually going pen to paper or fingers to keyboards, and we're actually designing training programs. So as we develop a short-term plan, we don't want to have to go back there unless there's something that we need to edit. So that short-term plan is developed, and just like a lot of us have been used to for the past few years, it's like now we want that thing to show up in our calendar so we know what we're doing on a week-to-week basis. So you'll notice that those commas are acting as tagging mechanisms, and we're just getting priority tags relative to exercise inside of the calendar. So all we're doing is we're putting, fingers to keyboards, and we're designing those specific training sessions inside of the calendar based on what the short-term plan and eventually what we put inside of the daily plan. And then, like I mentioned yesterday, those white priority circles, those are going to be your exercise priorities for that day. And then the black ones are going to be your lifestyle priorities for that day. And we'll talk about that again tomorrow. But when you're in this calendar view, it's just nice to know what your client has all in. And then, like I said, you can click that dumbbell in the top right and it'll flip that calendar to the lifestyle view to see, how compliant they've been that week or the previous week in lifestyle prescriptions and what they have prescribed to them.
Just to answer Victor Hugo's question around whether if you don't mark something as a work day, a workout day, is that going to appear on the client view as a rest day? It will show on the calendar that the coach is looking at that it's a rest day. But Carl, the client isn't actually going to see rest day for that day, will they? There'll just not be any workout.
Exactly. Yeah, they will if the if the coach hits the add rest day to the calendar, like you see here on a Wednesday. I hit add rest day, so the client will see rest day on Wednesday in exercise.
And then Alan had asked about clients that train on different days, maybe 2 days, 1 week, 3 another. Do you have any best practices around dealing with that?
Yeah, what I would do, because this whole system is based off of days of the weeks and a calendar, that becomes really challenging. So what best practices right now, and it is a work around, is just who cares about what your daily plan says Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Start to mark your days, day 1, day 2, day 3. So let's say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you put, and in the very first line, you put all caps, day 1, comma, and then Tuesday, day 2, comma. And then as you're designing on a week-to-week basis, you're going to understand where those days go. So you're essentially just going to understand day 1 goes here, day 2 goes here. And then there's some cool things that you can do with titling of the workouts as well to keep you on track to understand what week you're in and what day you're using. So like, if I'm in week 3 and it's day 2, I can use like a 3.2 format to understand that I'm in week 3 and day 2 of that specific split. But hey, I would love, because James and I actually talked about this, because Leanne, his wife, follows a split like that, where James just kind of says, I want you to do these workouts and get them in any days you can, and then I'll give you another set next week. And we were talking about, it's like, what's a good way to prescribe that inside of this? And I was stumped, because I'm like, this is so calendar based. Everything's calendar based, and it's so specific to a day of the week. So if you guys have any outstanding ideas, shoot them over. FMEs. So this is pretty straightforward. So FMEs, we're just looking at where our client is based on the testing that we're giving them or the assessing that we're giving them. The view that you're looking at right now is the structural balance view. So this is what we talk about in CCP when we're like, the power snatch should be 50% of the back squat, so on and so forth. This is just a really clean view of that. And then you'll notice that if you see orange, that means that your client is quote unquote too strong. If you see red, you'll notice that your client is quote unquote too weak. And then if you see green, you'll notice that they're structurally balanced. And then when we look at those 1, 2, and 3 check marks at the top, remember we said those are motor control, strength endurance, and max contractions. But max contractions, you guys know, we don't say people should back squat 225 pounds or you suck. We don't say that. What we're saying is we want you to be structurally balanced after you've accomplished strength endurance. So we take into consideration, is there balance back squat to front squat, right? If that's the case, you're going to get that third check on the max contraction piece. So that is max contraction as well as structural balance in those 3 tick marks up top. So yeah, just think about, where is your client today? Do you actually need any additional insight? So let's not fall into that trap of thinking that we have to do all of these tests with every single one of our clients. Most clients, guys, you might do 3 of these tests and that's it, right? We wanted to build it so if if you had to do all these tests with a client, you have the capability to do it inside of the system, but don't think you have to have like this awesome, beautiful structural balance sheet filled out for everyone. It's just there if you need it. And then also think about, because we're talking about transitioning into design, think about what insights did you not get in OPEX body, move, and work. Sorry, George, I almost said BMW. Body, move, and work that you need to actually get in the first week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks of program design. Really start to think about those things. And please, 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 unless you're coaching ultra competitive athletes, don't make their first 2 weeks of training with you all testing and assessing FMEs so you can fill this out. Most clients will say, fuck you, that this sucks. I don't want to work with you anymore. All I'm doing is beating my head against the wall and doing really hard contractions and tough anaerobic work. So really keep those things in mind. Don't fall in the trap that this thing needs to be filled out with all of your clients all in. I thought that was important to say because I've gotten so many questions of like, when's the best time to test the 1 rep max back squat? When's the best time to test the clean? It's like, maybe there is no best time. Do you actually need to do that? So really think about what who your clients are and what their goals are, and if you need to even utilize these FMEs. And also realize that you can create custom FMEs. The custom FMEs will not be connected to the structural balance sheet, but you can create custom FMEs and use those across, X amount of avatars of clients if that's relevant.
On that point, Carl, is there a rule of thumb, best practice that you could advise coaches on when they are like looking at their client thinking, what should I or shouldn't I test?
Yeah, I would say if you feel like you don't have an answer to something based on conversations with them and the initial physical assessment, and you think that implementing one of these FMEs would help you answer that question, then do it if they're capable of doing it. But let's not, like for this guy, for instance, like what would we not test with him? Quick little Georgia style quiz. What would we not test with this guy based on what we know about him over the past 2 days? But yeah, Carl, perfect. A back squat, right? We wouldn't test the back squat with this guy. So, that's an answer right there for you, right? It's like, understand what you need to test with people and understand what they're capable of testing. I wouldn't test a goblet squat with them either, right? So just think about those things and don't try to jump too far ahead just because you think you have to have that number. So yeah, I would just say like, ask yourself, what do you think is missing? And if an FME, a specific FME will answer a question for you.
Thanks, Carl. I was like, is he quizzing me or the chat box?
Chat box. No, you do the quiz stuff sometimes on webinars. So
Yeah, it's good fun. Got to keep it interactive. All right. So client experience to finish it off.
Yeah, I'll roll through this quick, right on time. We have 4 minutes and I'm going to get through it. So just walking you through what this looks like in the app. You'll have the session status. So that gray box as your client either fills A1 through B2 out, and the system recognizes that the client did complete the workout, that block will be checked automatically. Or if your client just wants to go to the top and click that, it'll automatically complete everything underneath it. Like if it's a 4 quality piece and you're not even asking for metrics or anything like that, you can just press that check mark. And then I think it was Suzanne who asked this question. So yeah, they will see their daily priorities inside of the app. So they're going to, we don't push the lifestyle priorities over because it's so obvious. It's like, yeah, these are your lifestyle priorities, because if you click lifestyle, all of these things are prescribed to you. But exercise is just so different, where, you're not saying A1 bend, right? So we want them to know what the priorities are here. And don't think that you have to fill this priority piece out like I filled it out in the daily plan. Maybe there's some progressive mechanism inside of that. Maybe it's bend and then parentheses, volume, arrow to intensity. So you're giving some insights into your clients. So like, okay, I know that I'm going to build an intensity or load next week. So you can get really creative in how you connect your clients to their training program. That's why I love the idea of the daily priorities being there for your client. Then just typical stuff, warm up. We have exercise and the exercise history. We have exercise library. So George is making a nice little cameo there. And then we have piece status and upload. So by piece, I mean exercises or mixed modal pieces, status and uploads, comments and uploads, and then menu. So yeah, nothing too crazy or nuanced here, guys. Just pretty standard stuff in the client app.